Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to my guest, Mr. Erekose. I've just finished watching, as have a lot of other people, a really interesting chat that you did with Zelma and Jared.
With Zelma and Jared, yes.
Yeah, it's very good, very interesting. A lot of people tuned in to watch, and unlike now, but not to worry about that. They'll be along soon.
They'll show up. They don't always show up right away,
That's right. Yeah. But no, it was very interesting.
It was, yeah.
Well,
just what Zelma does, just what Zelma does with that youth, advocacy group she works with there in New Mexico, and just what she's doing to help facilitate, better contact between, law enforcement and victims and potentially, juveniles and mentally limited juveniles. And so what they're doing there to create a more, stable environment where more reliable information can be obtained is, pretty brilliant.
Absolutely. Look, this is the way it should be. This reminds me of when Kathleen Zellner, in one of the episodes of Series 2, says of the judge, so what we should be availing ourselves of the of scholarly decisions. She says, well, yes, you should avail yourself of the best practices. Why not?
Right.
Why not adopt the best? Why not learn and adapt? This idea. We've got a saying in the borders. It's I been. Just because of what happened 5 years ago, 10 years ago, because these set precedents, doesn't mean to say they're right, does it?
Not necessarily. No.
No. You touched on it yourself when you mentioned that just after the decision by the Supreme Court not to hear Brendan's case, that email from Steve Drizzen,
right,
where he talks about the fact that the majority decisions and the majorities and the dissenters, they over time they become
right. The dissenters can become or at least a majority opinion can be issued at a later date that will look heavily at the dissenting of opinion of a case like Brendan's on bank review. So yeah, definitely. That's what I was saying. So yeah. And that's probably gonna happen. There's gonna be another case that's gonna come through, and the courts are gonna see the merit in it, and those majority judges may refer to some of the things laid down by Judge Rovner and Judge Wood in their dissenting opinion in Brendan.
Yeah, I mean, I can't help thinking that the Making a Murderer, it provoked so much interest amongst the normal people of the world. It's even got these some of these stupid guilters fired up, and it is a huge case. One of the thoughts I have with Governor Evers is that he probably is going to wait to see how Stephen's case develops.
Yeah, well, I suppose. I mean, he could be looking at that. I mean, he could be looking at whatever he wants, but yes. I mean, is he looking at it at all? Is the real question. I mean,
well, he took a long time, didn't he?
I don't know how much he knows about it. I mean, I'm sure he has some awareness of it, but I don't. It's hard to say.
I suppose he'll probably have advisors, and maybe some of them will try and steer him away from certain subjects.
Certainly, they would. Yeah.
We just don't know. I'm a half glass full type of guy. I always look on the sort of bright side of things,
Right.
But no, just getting back to your the fella Jared from I think you said New Mexico.
Jared, yeah, New Mexico, yes.
Yeah, so he's in law enforcement.
He is a detective there in New Mexico, yeah.
I mean, you know, when you hear people like him, that's how people should be. I always remember that Steve Drizzen.
Well, if you were listening to him also there, he wasn't necessarily taking he wasn't taking a negative view necessarily against it. He was willing to acknowledge certain things that we were pointing out, that if they in fact happen, that they are concerning and that sort of stuff. But he, being in law enforcement, was very careful about not just openly coming out against the law enforcement officers here. So I thought that was interesting, but I agree that he is an open-minded kind of guy. The fact that he was willing to sit down and talk with me in a situation, talking about making a murderer, as it is here on my channel, I mean, that's an unfriendly arena for somebody like him to step into. And he came in with a smile on his face, and he was a pretty classy guy. So I got a lot of respect for him.
Yes, I always remember a tweet, I believe it was by Steve Drizzen, where he'd been in Birmingham. That's Birmingham, as in the West Midlands of England, and a member of the police force, I believe he was also a detective that does interviews, came up to him and said, that if he had done what Wiegand and Fassbender had done, he would be out of his job.
Right. Sure. But and you could see Jared was concerned when we were talking about the day at Fox Hills.
Yes.
Where the missing day, basically, and how we were talking about how Fassbender claims that he's not a psychologist, and he can't he can't evaluate mental capacity or whatever. It's like baloney, dude. You spent that whole day at Fox Hills, or some part of the day at Fox Hills with Brendan, and you have no idea that he had some limitations. You're full of it.
Absolutely. Something that actually it was our good friend Travis touched on yesterday, and I'll just read it to you, and I'll probably find some more stuff about this because this was quite a famous thing. Certainly I was well aware of this. The Milgram experiments on obedience to authority figures was a series of social psychology experiments conducted by Yale University psychologist Stanley Milgram. They measured the willingness of study participants, men from a diverse range of occupations with various levels of education, to obey an authority figure who instructed them to perform acts conflicting with their personal conscience. Participants were led to believe that they were assisting an unrelated experiment in which they had to administer electric shocks to a learner. These fake electric shocks gradually increased to levels that would have been fatal had they been real. The experiment found unexpectedly that a very high proportion of subjects would fully obey the instructions, albeit reluctantly. Milgram first described his research in a 1963 article in the Journal of Abnormal and Social Psychology. What I was going to say was that we hear very little from Conrad Pete Bates. But the one thing he does say is that who does he blame for this mess? Number one, who is the one that pointed everybody to go in that direction? Who was the one? To a certain extent, I do accept that Wiegand and Fassbender were simply Kratz's puppets. Because I heard you
following orders. Yeah.
I heard you question in the same way that I've questioned. We just don't know how much of it was like a willingness to do what they did. Did they ever question what they were doing? Surely they would have done. But what I'm saying is that given this experiment, because Kratz is calling the shots, they will do, because they are members of law enforcement, They are trained to do as they're told. And if they have to get this confession out of somebody, so be it.
Yeah. I mean, there's a certain amount to that. There's a lot there to suggest to me that Wiegert and Fassbender were aware.
Absolutely.
And yet there's a lot there to suggest to me that they could have just been in that whole blue brotherhood haze.
Yep.
And just plowed forward. I mean, but man, dude, when you're plowing forward over a 16-year-old's life, I would think you would have more, crisis of conscience about it. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't seem like they did. And that's another reason why it seems like they are complicit, mm-hmm. Because they don't seem to, they're not looking back at it now going, I think maybe we could have maybe done things differently. I mean, technically for the time we were within the rules, but looking back at it now, but they don't take that kind of a tone or that kind of a, attitude about it. They're just like, no, it was good. It's perfect. It's great. It's fine. It's nothing wrong with it. Most of the world disagrees.
Well, hold on a sec. I know what you're saying, but Fassbender doesn't know when he was confronted.
Right, I know that one.
Show,
yeah.
Do you honestly think that Brendan Dassey did everything that he confessed to? Wiegert's answer was, do I think he did everything? I think it was probably not.
Right.
Do I know which bits he did and which bits he didn't? I don't know.
Yeah.
And that's the trouble with a confession, isn't it? It's supposed to make it clear.
Right.
It's supposed to make it clear.
Well, that's just it. But it's not clear, is it? When everything's fed to him, when it's all fed to him, I mean, number one, it's not, it ceases to be voluntary, because if all the information is given to him before he says it, that's not voluntary. That's not volunteered. You understand how that works, right? Volunteered, folks, right? So number one, it's not voluntary, which is enough to discredit it, right? But
absolutely.
But beyond that, it's the coercion happening there. Is if what is being said doesn't come from Brendan, and this is something that Nyrider has kind of leaned heavy on. This narrative didn't come from Brendan because it was all suggested to him and he just said it back. This is the narrative of the police officers. It's their story. Okay. And that's true. It is. It's whether it's Wiegert and Fassbender's or whether it's Kratz's, whether it's the states as a whole, I don't know however you want to look at it, but they had a narrative and they pushed that narrative onto Brendan and he spit it back at them. That is what happened. You can't deny it because that's what you see happen on the tape. You can see that they say it first, then he says it. And we see that they try to get him to say things before they do, but he just ends up going on these long guessing sprees. And they hate that because when he goes on these long guessing sprees, that's stuff on tape that makes them look ridiculous. It makes this confession look ridiculous. So they didn't like that. And that's why it became a game of them suggesting it to him using yes or no questions. So they're asking one question, but in the asking of that yes or no question, they're suggesting some other facts they want him to pick up in the asking of the yes or no question. Do you understand? And that's what they're doing. And they're conveying information to Brendan that he can spit back to them in the asking of a question. See? So you can clearly see this all happen in the interrogation. It's the fact that it's being fought by Wisconsin doesn't surprise me. They're going to obviously go ahead and cover their butt. But the on-bank majority, those four should hang their head in shame, in my opinion.
Well, they're going to hide behind EDPA.
ADPA, yeah. I think that's cowardly, and I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, I think it was mentioned by one or two people that although Kathleen Zellner points out that they should have, they should have answered Judge Hamilton's question differently. The fact is that those judges had already made up their mind how they were going to vote anyway, and I don't see that the en banc review probably made any difference anyway. But I think sometimes the lawyers in this case, they have to be a bit too polite at times, don't they?
I suppose.
What
yeah.
What we do know is that this was an often quoted phrase that Stephen Avery was becoming the poster child of wrongful convictions.
Right. Yep.
And what do we mean by that?
Well, what is meant by it is because he was on TV all the time. He was with the governor, on TV with the governor, up at the podiums and stuff for little press conferences. And so being, exonerated after spending 18 years in prison, he had become a bit of a local celebrity in terms of helping to create awareness for wrongful convictions. So that's basically what that means.
And do you think he was popular within the members of the law enforcement community?
No, not with the law enforcement community. No,
I don't think so either. I don't see Wiegert and Fassbender having any trouble whatsoever following Ken Kratz's orders to do whatever you need to do to get this lad. He's the alibi. We need him taken care of. Do whatever you need to do. It just and are they gonna have thoughts? Well, maybe a bit unfair, because the lad's only 16 and he apparently back then he was assessed as having in effect a mental age, believe it or not, of a child between the age of 5 and 10.
Right. Yep. That's what I heard. Right.
Yep. So I don't have any trouble whatsoever with Wiegert and Fassbender simply following the orders that they were given by Mr. Kratz.
I agree. I agree. It's a plausible scenario. I just believe there may be maybe one or two other plausible scenarios.
Such as?
I don't know. They could have been in on it. They could have known what was going on, or at least maybe Fassbender did. And obviously it was getting Stephen Avery back in prison was a big part of getting the genie back in the bottle. Because a lot of people deny that here, but it's the truth. By revilifying Stephen Avery, it halted that whole movement that was going on that Governor Doyle tried to initiate, where they were going to try to clean up, and get things a little bit more proper in Wisconsin to avoid more wrongful convictions. And that was the way things were headed. You knew you knew legislation was going to start coming out that was going to start being a little bit, that law enforcement wasn't going to like. They were going to feel it was probably tying their hands.
Mm-hmm.
So in my opinion, the DOJ, law enforcement, had an interest. Well, they could have had motivation. Whether, and I'm not saying that this is what happened, but I'm saying that the motivation is clearly there to motivate them to want to revilify Stephen Avery so that it would stop that whole movement that was happening. And revilifying Stephen Avery was the easiest way to do it, to stop that movement that was happening with that many people. It was revilifying one man was the easiest way.
Yeah, it didn't just do that. The arrest of Stephen Avery for Teresa Halbach's disappearance caused a fella, what's the correct term for them? Some sort of legislator, some sort of person who makes up laws and stuff, called Alan Lass, to come up with this theory that Wisconsin should reintroduce the death penalty.
Right.
Crimes supported by DNA evidence.
Right.
It just
and I think Judge Willis postponed the trial a little bit to wait I think until after the voting came in on that or something.
Well, I think it was Dean and Jerry that asked for that delay because they realized that people would be voting right in the middle of the jurors would basically, they would finish one day and then they would go and vote on this decision.
Right. So yeah, that's interesting that's all going down. I mean, and think about if that had worked, and if Wisconsin had put the death penalty back on the books, and if the state had been able to kill Stephen Avery by now, imagine how well that would have worked out for him. Because obviously, with Stephen Avery being alive and everybody looking into this, it's annoying, but. If the death penalty had taken care of Stephen Avery for them, that would have been for them ultimately, that would have been something they would have been happy with and fine with. So.
We've got one of our guests from Mamathon.
Yep, Henbury. Wouldn't it just be easier to kill him legally? Yes. Well put, Henbury. Well put.
Well, my own thoughts there were the fact that they had to stop Kosarik and Vogel.
Vogel and Kosarik depositions.
Had to put an end to it. They had to. They realized things were not going well for them.
Right.
That had to come to an end. Whether or not killing Steve. To me, that would have just. We know that they have an assassination unit within Manitou Sheriff's Department. Peterson tells us.
You know that. No, I know what you mean.
Yeah. but that wasn't really an option, was it? Because the civil suit would
have only created more attention. Yeah.
Exactly, and it would just look. It would be so obvious.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It was ridiculous that he suggested it, but the fact that he even uttered it out of his mouth tells you he had considered it.
Yeah.
Like it must have gotten talked about in a coffee room somewhere at the department or something at one point, because how else does that come out of somebody's mouth? I mean, that's something else.
No, it's funny how certain videos of mine have attracted one or two guilters. And I had an absolute classic from Just Supporting the Lies.
Oh.
And I'm not going to read the whole lot to you. I'm just going to start off from... Let me find it. This was unbelievable. Let's see if I can find this one. Okay, here we go.
All right.
This is somebody who goes by the name of Just Stating the Truth, but we'll see
about that. All right.
I don't think this is Ken Kratz. I think we're pretty clear. Charles Darwin has never denied that he's Ken Kratz. In fact, on one occasion, you remember I asked this question on a video. I said, if you could choose any lawyer to defend you, who would you choose? And Charles Darwin said straight away, I would choose Ken Kratz because he's a great
only person that would say that about him right now would be him. So
yes, yeah. I mean, I'm rewatching, believe it or not, Making a Murder Series 2, and you still pick up on things that didn't quite register the first time round,
right.
and you see them from slightly different angles, don't you?
Because you start thinking about certain parts of the case in different light as your information about certain areas of the case gets filled in. You start to go, oh, okay, wait, if that's happening here. Then and you start like making correlations. It's like it's something about fullness of understanding that as your understanding becomes more full over time, that you certainly do tend to ponder things in a little different light.
Yeah. So here we go. And I'm not going to read all of the comments by all of the guilters. All I'll say is that there's two videos that have attracted the attention of certain guilters. One of them was my Christmas message of, supporting the Christmas measures to the supporters of truth for Teresa, Steve, and Brendan. And one particular idiot, what was her name? Tess Sanders, took exception to that. Anyway, we'll get onto her in a minute. Yeah. Isn't
she suing you because you mentioned her name?
Well, we'll get onto that because that is absolutely brilliant. To cut a long story short, she claims that I'm abusing her privacy, and yet then in a further comment,
goes and starts telling you her life's history.
She tells us all about who she is.
In a public forum. Yeah, I know. It's hilarious.
It's laughable. But what about this one, right? This is this video that I put about the guilters. The video that I did specifically for Tess. I think she's quite pleased that I did a video about it. I think underneath there's a little bit of sort of affection there.
Yeah.
Just stating the truth, though, did Paul really just say that? We are an incredibly diverse group. Oh my God, really, Paul? So, Paul, how many people of African descent have you had on your videos? Would you like to answer that one for me?
Of African descent?
Yeah.
Actually, I wouldn't like to answer. I wouldn't like to touch that particular topic. I mean, because I have to define what I in order to answer your question, I have to try to put some kind of what I define as African, and in order to answer your question, which could be potentially, controversial. So I'd rather not just, willy nilly out in midair try to, I don't know. She should be more careful.
Yeah. Well,
as I am being.
Okay, I'll give you my answer. Everyone that's ever walked on this planet is of African
from
descent.
That. Yeah, that is true.
Scientists assure that Homo sapiens first evolved in Africa, and we know that every person alive today can trace their genetic ancestry to there.
I agree that the DNA goes back to a skeleton that they found in Africa, and yes, I agree. Now, people who believe heavily in the Lord and in God and Jesus and their religions, they deny scientific stuff like that. They haven't figured out how to fit it into their philosophy yet. That's the way I look at it. But I don't know. The science is interesting, and it is there that shows that. But the point is that a lot of that's not where racism started. Racism started much later after humans moved from Africa and started to populate the entire world. That's when they started becoming different, breaking off into tribes and different tribal factions and different, and all that sort of stuff. And that's when racism started. So.
You see, I mean, the thing is that for me, it's like I do not differentiate people by their color. I differentiate people as being from diverse, the diversity of people, regardless of what color they are. It's where they're actually from, And if on one video I'm chatting with somebody as far west as the west coast of America, and then on another video I'm chatting with people from the east coast of Sydney, of Australia, and so many places in between, then that was just a stupid comment. But anyway, that's
yeah, it is. That's careless. I mean, that was a careless comment to make.
Interestingly, though, it did remind me of the time when you remember when we were in Sydney and you went on your first major expedition in search of Dr. Pepper.
My first major expedition. Was that at the Wyong Milk Factory?
No, in Sydney.
See that right there?
Yeah,
right there. Yeah. Well, we left Sydney. We left Sydney pretty quickly, if you remember. We got into a limousine.
No. Yes, yeah, but when we came back to Sydney, we stayed at the Palisade.
And okay, and when we were at the miners' cottages.
Yes, we were there the 2 days.
All right. So, okay. Then I walked, well, actually I didn't break off. We all went down to look at the Sydney the Sydney Opera House and the bridge. Which bridge is it? I forget the name of the bridge, but the big bridge.
Sydney Harbour Bridge, yeah.
Sydney Harbour Bridge, there you go.
We had the photo.
And as we were walking down there, I saw a shop that, I don't know, it looks like it might be about the equivalent of a 7-Eleven or a Circle K down there in Australia, which is common here in America. But anyway, I popped in there and they had Dr. Pepper. And so for the rest of the trip, whenever I saw that sign, I knew I'm going to go in there and check because they've had it so far. Fortunately, when we were at Marvel Stadium, that one only had diet. Oh, God, I hate diet. Can't stand it. That aspartame leaves such a horrible taste in my mouth that I just can't stand it.
Right. Okay.
But anyways, I digress.
We go outside the Palisade. Imagine you're looking outside the Palisade.
Yes.
And you look across, and there was that cafe on the corner.
Yes, where you guys kept going to get your coffees.
Yes.
What'd you guys call them? I don't remember. Something whites, wasn't it?
Was it? I don't know.
The coffee you guys were getting every morning.
I only went the once. Stacy loves his coffee.
He does, yeah.
He does. But you went to the next shop, and then you went to several other shops before you found your Dr. Pepper.
Oh yes, okay. Now I remember what you're talking about. Yeah, I did. As we got there,
the first shop.
You guys went somewhere, and then I walked down towards where we eventually went. Mm-hmm. But I walked down and eventually found something. I think. No, actually, I think I didn't. I don't know. But then eventually, Mark said, "Okay, well, we're gonna go down," and we got in the car and we went down or whatever. And when he had parked, there was something nearby I found, I think, I remember what happened. But anyway, I don't know. Yeah, it wasn't hard. It wasn't easy to find Dr. Pepper in Australia. So it wasn't exactly very hard, but it wasn't exactly very easy.
This is true. This is true. But if you remember the very first shop, the actual shop that you had, that was like a little, as you would call it, like a convenience store.
Right.
It was like a corner shop.
Yeah, it was on the corner. Yeah, it was right next to the place where we got the Battleship Gray pepperoni pizza.
That was much further. That was much further.
That was later, but it was next to it. But anyway.
Yeah, but to get down to there, you had to go under the sort of extended bit of the Harbour Bridge.
Right. Yeah.
But it was really close to the
Flat White. That's what it was called. Henbury knows what it was. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. You're just trying to put me off.
It's good times. No, I love talking about Australia. And he just got it. Henbury remembered. It's Flat White. I was like, now I'm remembering. Yes, that's what it was. Flat White. Every morning, Stacy and Mark going for their flat whites.
Yeah.
Anyway, so.
we were still drinking last night's beer that was left over.
I do drink Coke on occasion. Rule. It's just not my favorite.
Yeah. Can you remember those? Okay, let's put it this way. Can you remember those? They were like a big pot noodle, like a big pot soup, spicy flavored.
Oh yes, that you got. Yeah, those were good. Yeah,
they were really good. I got them from that shop, which was on the next corner.
Right.
And can you remember the nationality or if you like.
Oh yeah, I know who you're talking about now. That kid that we ran into. That shop, yeah, okay. I'm starting to remember that shop you're talking about now.
When
I remember the kid that was working in there. Yeah,
most of the shops were actually run by members, obviously, of the Asian community.
Right.
And the fella there, as soon as I went in with my Brendan Dassey T-shirt, he immediately asked me, "How's the case going?"
Yeah,
no,
I didn't catch that.
Yeah, I came back and told you.
You may have.
I'd given them a card and everything, and said,
"Oh yeah, I do remember you saying that." Yeah, okay, I do remember that.
Tune in. People in a convenience store in Australia that don't sell Dr. Pepper, even they heard of making a murderer and was actually very interested in the case. And if you remember as well, when we first got to the Palisade, there was one or two people there that had finished work early, and that we were talking to them
about
the guys. Why we were there. Why, it sounds like the first line of a joke. A Scotsman, an American, a Californian, and an Australian man walk into a pub. It wasn't the first. It was true. And you remember we were speaking to people in the pub. They knew about the case.
Right. Well, they had some awareness of it, and they actually. Yeah. But you started talking to him, and then you came over to me and said, "Hey, these guys want to know some more about the case or whatever." And so I ended up going over and I don't know, talked to those guys for probably about a half an hour. Yeah. I don't know. It was a while. Three workers though. They were just three blue collar dudes, you know, and they were they were obviously blue collar. It showed in kind of their demeanor, which was great. I love, I like the blue collar crowd myself. So, but they were, just having a pint after work. And so we got to chat, and it was fun. So
yeah, and then when we went to, obviously we went to Sydney. That place was full.
Sydney was jamming, yeah.
Melbourne
was also hopping,
even bigger.
Yeah, and quite in terms of, and like the architecture and the buildings seem to be a little more modern and modern, you know what I mean, than they are in Sydney. But I think that's part of the charm of Sydney, is that it's trying to hold on to all of the original buildings and everything, because that's where Australia was built from. That's where everybody came in and landed, and everything, that was the big port. It's kind of it was the gateway. And so there is a big push for them to want to preserve as much of that as they can. And so I can understand why maybe they're not as modern as Melbourne, because there's a lot of historical stuff there in Sydney. It's really cool. You can get Dr. Pepper most places now, even supermarkets. I am in Brisbane. Like I said, I'm not saying it was hard to find. I was able to find it with some looking. But sometimes I had to hit a couple different shops. So, that was all. It wasn't hard though. I was able to find it.
Yeah.
And then Paul found me one and brought it back to the miners' quarters there where we were hanging out and where we were staying. And then the next day, as I'm getting ready I just woke up, I'm going live, and we're talking about Teresa. I was doing a video about Teresa that day. And literally, as I'm ready to go live, I turn around and Paul has my Dr. Pepper in his hand, and he's like opening it up and taking a drink. I'm like, dude, I thought you were drinking the Pepsi One.
It's like, yeah. What's this? I knew I got cans of Pepsi Max in there, and maybe first.
Oh yeah, Max. That's what it was.
Eyesight wasn't what it was, and I opened it thinking it was a Pepsi Max, and it was this Eddie Dr. Pepper. Gee whiz. Yeah. Oh dear. Yeah, that was. Yeah, that was good fun. Trying to do a live in the kitchen of the Miller's Point. That's where we were.
Miller's Point. That's where we were staying. Yep. That was awesome. And hey, I'm glad I went live from in there, and I'm glad we got some video of those. Those are really cool. Again, the historical ambiance of Sydney those cottages have been, they used to be where workers lived, but they have been somewhat renovated but kept original. Okay. And it's important. Like I was talking to Mark about this while we were there. They literally, there's a little pub that's at the front of these little, it's basically kind of like a hotel made, but it's from these old miners' cottages. And this little pub. And so he was like saying, like, he goes, Richard, or he goes, you know, look at that door. He goes, if they wanted to replace one pane of glass on that door, it has to be the same exact glass that the door was made out of. So literally it has to be the glass of the same type and constituency of the glass that's in the other panes of the door. Or if they remove one piece of molding, they have to be able to find that exact piece of molding or whatever to put back, or they have to go through a big process of getting approved because they want to keep everything original. That's how invested they are in Sydney in holding on to that historical value, which I think is cool, but it must be frustrating for some of those business owners when something breaks down and they got to replace something, because it probably often leads to a lot of money being spent. Didn't you sing in the car? Yeah, we did. We did karaoke to Stacy Seabrook. Car karaoke. Too bad James Corden couldn't have been there. Anyway.
It was, yes. No, it's like I keep seeing a lot of the Marvel Stadium at the moment, because there's two cricket teams currently playing in for Melbourne in their big limited overs series.
Yeah.
So I keep seeing the Marvel Stadium, and of course that was something else, going there and putting the banner up, you know, and taking the photographs, and then disappearing and finding you with the police officers.
Well, Stacy and I, that was funny. It was funny because Stacy's just like, he's just not missing a beat, and he's just like handing them like business cards, and you can see the one officer kind of took it, looked at it. He was like actually kind of like looking at like the other one. It may as well have been Stacy was handing that officer a poop filled diaper. The way that officer kind of took it and looked at the card and everything, it was funny. But they eventually ended up just like, you know, they made us unroll it so they could look at it. They just had to make sure it didn't have an advertisement on it and it didn't have a racially charged message. As long as it didn't have either one of those two things, they were like, all right, we're out of here. So.
Okay, getting on to the lovely Tess Sanders.
Yes.
Tess, if you are going to comment on social media, people can mention your name. In fact, YouTube encourage you to mention people's name. They show you how you can do it. Like, for example, when I was watching your video earlier, one or two people were able to highlight my name so that if my name came up,
right,
it stood out.
Right.
You have to put something before
the name symbol. Yeah.
The site.
At symbol.
The at symbol, and then it highlights that person's name.
Similar to the way that Henbury has done Roll Griffin.
Yes.
Rule Griffin.
So Rule will see that, and it'll be
it'll be block orange around it for Rule.
Yeah. So Tess, you need to listen carefully to this, because this is some information about social media that you may not realize. She put okay first. You just publicly slandered me by name on an entire video. Well, yes, because you are dim-witted, and maybe I'm being a bit unfair. How about slander? You've now entered into legal territory and been reported.
Is your video shut down?
Not yet. I'm still waiting on the email from YouTube.
Right.
Yeah. You say my name and attack me publicly on a personal level. Then you call me names. Well, sorry, darling, you deserve the criticism that you get because you are an idiot. But anyway, let's just carry on. If you dare write anything about me again, I will take this even further. All I did was write a comment. This has gone to YouTube as a violation of my privacy rights by mentioning her name.
She didn't have a leg to stand on. You're
Right.
commenting in a public forum. I mean, once you comment in a public forum, you are open to whatever in that forum. I mean, it's just, yeah.
Yeah. So then the next message, okay, I sent the transcript to my legal office. This is Saturday night. This is like 2-3 in the morning for me. This is like 10 o'clock, 10 o'clock of a Saturday night in America. I take it she must deal with a 24/7, 24 hours, 7-day a week legal office then if she's
right.
And how do you get the whole transcript of a video that I've done?
She'd have to have somebody sit down and listen to it and transcribe it. Or, well, if you have the ability for people, if you have the ability for people to,
is it like closed captions?
Do captions for your channel?
Yeah.
Then she would be able to get in there and she would be able to use the default one, the one that the YouTube creates with their algorithm, trying to guess what you're saying, which it gets most of it right, but it gets words wrong. It gets certain things wrong here and there. She might have been able to get something like that.
Yeah. I wonder when I finish this if there will be a closed caption for Pogmahan. But anyway, we'll get to that later. I sent the transcripts to my legal office and to the legal community online that works with these cases. Unfortunately, your attack on me was too personal. If you hadn't used my name to publicly address a disagreement, this would have been a different issue. You took that extra step to personalize this. As for what you said about my grammar and spelling, very interesting. As I have a BA in history, I'm a published author, a Vietnam veteran, and a very well-known activist. Why is somebody that is complaining 1 minute about their sort of privacy, me somehow attacking their privacy, is then sending me stuff about them?
Right, and telling you all about how what they are, who they are, what they do. I mean, it's right. The whole fact is she didn't have a leg to stand on. I can't imagine any legal firm would want to try and do anything about this. My suggestion to her is change your name on YouTube. If you're using your real name on YouTube, change it. Change it to something else. Use a different name on YouTube. Then somebody who you refer to or talk to or comment on their video can respond to you without offending you. So that's my suggestion to Tess.
Yeah. Do you know when I read all of this stuff, it's all trying to attack me. It's trying to provoke me. It's trying to make me feel uncomfortable. It's trying to get me to lash back at them. I'm far too thick-skinned for that. It doesn't bother me in the slightest. In fact, it encourages me. To provoke from them the kind of responses I get, because it just undermines further their own opinion. But what I would say is this, that I do have a certain sympathy for these people who, if they are genuine about the fact that they are concerned about the loss of Teresa's life, is something that's not being discussed enough, then I get that. I do get that. What I would say though is, why are you trying to have a go at me in a video where I say a Christmas message to the supporters of truth and justice for Teresa, Steve, and Brendan?
Right.
I always put Teresa first. And You know that.
Did you use the Hod's ornaments as your thumbnail pic for that one? Have you seen that? I love that. That was awesome.
Yeah.
He had an ornament for Steve, an ornament for Brendan, and an ornament for Teresa. It was brilliant.
Yeah. The baubles, Christmas tree baubles. Yeah.
Yes, that's what we call them, ornaments, or yeah. That was it. So that was cool.
Ornaments is a good word. Ornaments, yes. Shiny balls is another way of describing.
Shiny balls.
Yeah.
Balls, folks. They gotta say it right.
Okay.
In Scotland. Anyway.
Okay. So the Volt.
Yes.
Were a group of ladies that got together.
Victims. Have we shifted to Henry Lee Lucas now?
Yeah. Okay. Victims of Lucas tragedy.
Right.
They were quite. To me, they seemed quite vigilante. They were very, very vocal. They were very, very, very much against George Bush. Was that? Now, who's the dad and who's the junior? Is it W is the dad?
George W.'s senior, and George Jr. is junior. I mean,
we're talking about George Bush Jr.
Right.
That was the governor.
George Bush Jr., who was governor. Yes. Yes, junior.
So they're obviously having to go at him to such an extent that where he's saying,
well, because he had pardoned, or he had commuted the death sentence and made it life, and they wanted to see him die, and so they were mad at him. They were mad at Governor Bush for that, and so they were hounding him. And
then what happened eventually in that case? They felt that they were being betrayed by the governor of Texas. And what was the final outcome of their?
Because they were making us think about it. They were getting a lot of attention. Mm-hmm. And for those of you who remember, George E. Jr. eventually ran for president and eventually won. Mm-hmm. Kind of. Anyway, so he didn't win the popular vote, but he won the electoral college. So anyways, that's all. That's the main thing anyways. So, but as he was getting ready to run for president, he didn't want the bad publicity from these ladies in Volt as he was trying to make his run for president. So he offered an olive branch and he asked them, what can I do to make this right for you? Mm-hmm. And one of the families brilliantly, and I'm assuming the other ones followed suit, immediately said, I would like the evidence in my sister's case tested. Mm-hmm. And I would like to have a DNA result of who that is and, whatever that can be compared, type of thing. And so he sent an investigator to do it. Yeah. And why is it? Why does it take shaking down a potential presidential candidate to get that to happen? Mm-hmm. That's a little disturbing, but hey, at least they got it.
Yeah, absolutely. It was the sister of Rita Salazar, who was the girl that was murdered 56 miles apart from the boyfriend, who was Kevin Key.
Right.
But obviously the point here is that once you get evidence tested, you end up with the right result, because eventually it was that Benny Tiorina that was arrested and found guilty of both murders. And for me, I see huge similarities between the for want of a better word, there are some in the guilty community who are sympathetic, shall we say, towards Brendan. But they but they take this opinion that Brendan simply was a sort of, he wasn't an accomplice to the crime, he was a witness to the crime, that somehow it was all Steve's doing,
or that he was intimidated by Stephen, and so therefore it wasn't really his fault. He wouldn't have done it without Stephen being there to that's at least that's their reasoning, folks. I'm not saying that's what I'm explaining, the reasoning of some guilters.
And the point is surely that once that evidence was tested, finally the truth came out. And is that all is that not all that we're asking? Or, please, to the guilters out there that are watching or may watch in the future, we don't have, as I've said many a time, we don't have this thing in our head that we lie awake at night thinking, how can we undermine Wisconsin? We don't wake up every morning thinking, what can we do to destroy law and order in Wisconsin? We always simply asking is, give the evidence to Zellner. Let her test it. If it comes back that Steve and Brendan are guilty, she's going to prove it for you. So the question is, what have you got to hide? I think it goes back, doesn't it, to Steve's wrongful conviction in '85.
Right.
You remember?
Oh, jeez. Yeah. Well, yeah, I agree. I mean, well, certainly everything goes back to '85. That's, that goes without saying.
Yeah.
That's basically the spark that got this whole fire rolling.
Yeah.
But
I mean, dude, I've just seen what you did. You've seen, if people think that's funny, fine. Just let them carry on. They're just embarrassing themselves.
Well, yeah.
But the point is, Dennis Vogel had 3 goes at explaining to the jury, using Penny Bernstein, getting her husband to show how she was attacked. It's in Mike Griesbach's book. The first 2/3 of this book is spot on.
Right.
Dennis Vogel really did a number on Stephen Avery. Mm-hmm. We see it so often, don't we?
Well, so often we see it uncommonly. Enough for it to be concerning. Yes, that's the answer to that question. Enough for it to be concerning.
The thing is that we've got the in so many of these cases, we've got these attorneys that present these. It's who is it that's often described it? It's just theatre. It's pantomime. It's just making somebody look so bad.
Right.
Yeah.
That's as what happens in our adversarial system, obviously. Yes.
Yeah.
And I like the way Sean Atwood puts it. And I've even had him on, and I've had him kind of do this explanation for everybody too. But he talks about how when he was at trial, he goes, the prosecution's over there painting me as the devil incarnate, and all that or whatever. And then over on my side, my attorneys are sitting there painting me as this little angel choir boy. And he's like, and neither one of them is anywhere near the truth, but that's what they got to do, because they have to be extreme, because they know that everything's going to get muddled in whatever in the arguing, So he goes, but it's basically all theatrics. And it generally ends up coming down to, in the end, who has the most money to put on the better theater show. And that's what it often comes down to. And so
this is the big problem, isn't it? For me, if there are genuine guilters out there who were taken in, even Dave Bogotka talks about the fact that when he first realized what had happened, when he first saw it all playing out, he was one of the ones that went along with everybody else. This guy, Stephen Avery, he's some sort of monster.
Right.
And when you're presented with just the barest facts, not even facts, little tidbits of information,
mm-hmm.
and you're presented with this story of, well, she went missing, the car's found on his yard, he was the last person to see her, the key, the bones,
right.
It's mm-hmm. I do have a certain sympathy for these people who they are blinded by their hatred of Steve. Let me put it that way.
Well, yeah, there certainly seems to be, or at least their bias. Yeah. Hatred or bias, one of the two.
As I said, with not long after I first watched Making a Murderer, I was speaking with one of the top psychiatrists in the Borders, and he was saying that, you know, had Making a Murderer come out in the Scottish Borders,
right,
most of the Scottish Borders would align behind the people who were being, in effect, accused of doing something wrong in that documentary.
Right.
You know, there would be a closing of ranks, because if you've got people as high up as the, you know, the sheriff and the DA being accused of wrongdoing,
yeah,
they just don't like that, do they?
I don't. You're saying that the Scots would have done what?
Well, I'm just saying that you know, it's happened in Manitowoc, where people in Manitowoc have closed ranks. I'm saying that's just human nature. It's the sort of thing that would happen anywhere.
Oh, sure, certainly. After after the results of the investigation into the independence referendum voter fraud, I'm convinced that they weren't very motivated. So I'll have to agree with you.
Yeah.
So,
you know, it's so look, to the guilters out there. This is another thing that's always interested me. In all the time that I've been doing these videos, I've invited any guilter on to come and have a chat. I'm going back to the days when Thomas Hens was around.
Yeah.
You know perfectly well that I invited him on several times.
Yeah.
And said, look, you know, why didn't you just come on and present your point of view? You know, I'm more than happy to do that. You know, hell, if I was still speaking with Robert Herman, I'd invite him on.
Right.
You know, but
totally. Oh, Sharon says, well said.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what. I don't. Oh, right, about the independent.
Am I just combobulating you today, Paul?
Is that me being?
Am I finally giving back as good as I get?
Anyway. Is that me being stabbed in the back by the stabby Glaswegian?
You're there. Oh, stabby capital. It's also the 5th friendliest city in Europe, so it's definitely a place of contrasts.
I've never denied that they are friendly. You know, it's like we went out, didn't we, in Manitowoc?
Yeah.
You know, we were there. I met people all over the place. You know,
I didn't get to go around with you guys when you guys were running around that day. I was actually doing something else, I think. But the first day, I was in Eagle. I was over in Nina while you guys were running around doing some stuff. But I heard you guys had fun.
We went into a local bar just a couple of blocks from the courthouse.
You were the courthouse pub.
No, the Irish bar.
Oh, the Irish. Oh.
couple of blocks away.
Couple blocks down. Okay.
Yeah. You know, I think at one point it was.
You went to the Bernstein store, right?
No.
Oh.
No. I don't think they've got that anymore. I think it's somebody else.
No, it's there. Oh, it's there. No,
it's there, but I'm saying the Bernsteins don't run it anymore.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm sure that's what, because Denise and Ali went there, didn't they?
Oh, I see.
Yeah. I'm sure they went there, and they said it's not the Bernsteins that have the shop anymore. But even though it's still called Bernsteins, because obviously it's such a well-known name.
Sure, I mean the name's going to be a part of it, right?
Yep. So, but yeah, look, people in Manitowoc are not the same as Glasgow, that's for sure. But even there, they're friendly people.
Yeah.
You know, in the pub in. The Irish bar, was it called Murphy's Bar? It might have been. I think it was called Murphy's Irish Bar. It was, you know, really, really friendly place. I found everybody everywhere I went to in Wisconsin, it was friendly. Even in Chicago,
right?
Yeah,
the people there are friendly enough, and I mean, I have no complaints about when I've gone to Wisconsin. I've had a very enjoyable time. Friendly people. I didn't have any big problems or issues or anything to really, complain about. I mean, the closest it'll get is when you hear Mr. Capaldi here making fun of me because I said there was weather over Chicago. That's about the worst you're going to find of me coming close to anywhere near complaining. The people in Wisconsin are lovely. The vista, when you're just driving in on the freeway and just the rolling green hills and the green forests off in the distance, and it's just a beautiful place. And I mean, Wisconsin has a lot going for it. Now we just get that justice system cleaned up a little bit, and it'll be a pretty nice little place. They're all called Murphys.
Yeah, they are. To be sure.
Right.
Yeah, they are. They are all. They are called Murphy's Bar, aren't they? Yes. That's
Or Blarney's.
Yes. So yeah. Just to sort of to tie things up, finish things up. Look, we get the fact that.
Oh, by the way, just one thing.
Yeah.
Yes, everybody, I do have a new chair. It's really awesome. Everybody's been commenting. Yes, it doesn't squeak and do any of that stuff. That was a big reason of why I wanted to get a new one. Plus, this one's just more comfortable, has more back support and stuff. So there we go. Yes, you guys noticed correctly. Go ahead, Paul. Sorry.
Where did the chair come from? That's what I want to know.
It came from a friend of mine who wasn't using it, and I occasionally would use it when I was over at their house. And so they gave it to me as a Christmas present because they knew I liked it and they didn't like my squeaky chair.
Was it the chair that was squeaky?
It was the chair.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. You don't hear any squeaking now, do you?
Not much, no.
I do love this chair, though.
But yeah, just to sort of finish up, I get the fact that there are people out there who were conned by Ken Kratz and all this drivel that he came out with. I get that. I it's just one of those things that for me it's like they just don't want to hear the truth.
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, haven't we all been like that in our life? Where there's been something that we should have realized sooner, but we fought against it. We, didn't want to. It took, especially when we're younger. Mm-hmm. But just took longer for certain things to sink in. I mean, there's a certain amount of that I think out there.
Yeah. We don't like being told that we're wrong.
Certainly not. Nobody does, and almost nobody responds well to it. It's almost always, fraught with problems.
But one of the questions that I constantly asked Robert Herman was, look, if and I always framed it the same way, if Kathleen Zellner produces evidence to prove that Steve is guilty, I will be the first person on the phone to you to apologize for having ever doubted the quality of the investigation. But what should happen when the evidence comes back to prove that you framed him?
Either way, the investigation's a shambles, but yeah. Yeah. So what did he say?
He never did answer.
No, I'm sure he didn't.
He could never answer. But like I said, on that one occasion when I actually said to him, "Look, a friend of mine that's in."
Didn't he show concern that she might get her hands on the RAV4? Wasn't he worried that she might get?
Yeah. That was really strange that he asked me if Kathleen Zellner had been given the RAV4 for testing, and he was concerned about that.
That's interesting.
It was, but then when I said to him about the fact that you could be the scapegoat, you could be made the scapegoat in this because you are the sheriff, you are the one that people can throw under the bus, to use a common expression. Right. And it was him that said to me, just as very similar to Mike Griesbach coming out and talking about his, if there was anything at all about the, if there was any sign of any evidence of planting, framing, he would look to investigate. When I said about...
Sorry, Henbury, we're talking about his correspondence with Sheriff Herman.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. When I said to him, you could be the one thrown under the bus, he said, if Kathleen Zellner produces any evidence of framing by my department, I will get in touch with her. And I still to this day don't know quite what he meant by that, other than the fact that clearly... to come out with that, he must have given that some thought.
Oh, I'm sure, right? It's just like, I mean, it's very similar to in the terms of that there must have been thought that went into it for that to get said. It's similar to the fact that there must have been thought into killing Stephen Avery for that to have been uttered by Peterson as a potential possibility of an easier way to get rid of Stephen. So when you hear these things uttered, it suggests that a conversation took place. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, okay. It could just be that Herman was just sort of pacifying me, just trying to be pleasant,
right?
But to say that,
it's always been interesting to me that he said that about the RAV4. So
yeah,
we'll see what happens. I mean,
well, I took it as being, it could have been the fact that he wanted to find out just what I knew, and if I was to use the term, if I was blowing him off, or whether I was being honest with him about who I knew and who I'd been speaking to,
right.
And that's what I took it as being, was it was possibly a test to see, does this guy know anything about this case, or is he just is he just coming on just to try and be awkward with me and
right,
give me a load of nonsense. And what I said to him was, I said, as far as I know, I don't think the RAV4 has been handed over.
Right, and it hasn't. And they don't want to.
Well, one thing that I did pick up on was the fact that he was not being kept informed by people higher up the food chain.
Right.
In other words, the less they tell him, the better, because he's one of these guys that could let things slip.
Right.
But that he'd been given this assurance, because remember I said that in the middle of one conversation, he just said, "Can I just tell you, Paul, Mr. Avery will spend the rest of his life in prison." And I immediately knew that was either
him trying to convince you or himself.
Well, I took that as meaning one of two things, possibly both things. A, that it was a line that he has had to use so often to people,
right,
that it just became a line that he naturally said, or that he'd received assurances from people that, don't worry, we'll make sure that he's never getting out. Now,
Travis, Religion and spells it out. I don't know. Try typing that one out again, Travis. I'm confused by some points in that. He meant that there is no evidence of framing, and there probably never will be unless the C14 testing methodology is radically improved or someone gets religion and spells it out. I think he means religious and spells it out.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's talking about Griesbach, isn't it?
Is that what it is? Oh, okay. All right. So,
yeah.
Anyway, so, yeah. So, and then as far as Herman goes, yeah, he's. Well, Herman, your correspondence with Herman and the way he acted about the RAV4 is interesting, but I only have to see the way that the state is dead set against not letting Zellner test it.
Absolutely.
When if Stephen's guilty, and if the RAV4 will prove that, the quickest avenue for them to get this over with would be to let her have the RAV4. If they are right, the quickest road to getting this done is to hand the RAV4 over to Zellner, but they aren't doing that. That is telling.
Well, they handed over was 8 or 9 pieces of evidence.
Yes,
and it's just, when you see that wood on the bullet.
Is the what?
The wood on the bullet.
On the wood fragments, right? Wood particles.
It's just, I don't think, I kind of suspect that Kathleen Zellner is right, that the state genuinely believed their own nonsense about him being guilty, and that because he was found guilty, they actually believed that, and they thought that by handing over these bits of evidence, that would be it.
Yeah.
And now that they, wasn't it strange how Kathleen Zellner has got this agreement with Fallon. We're going to have an evidentiary hearing. We're going to make we're going to make plans to get this RAV4 out. Let me sort out getting the RAV4 out.
Right.
What would he have done then? He would have simply phoned Calumet and said, "We need to get hold of this RAV4. What do you need the RAV4 for?" And then Judge Angie immediately shuts it down.
Well, I mean, that's one potential interpretation of the sequence of events. That's certainly within the realm of probability.
I suppose then I'm, just to finish off with our good friend, Mr. Keller. You know what he says? When do coincidences stop being coincidences and become a pattern?
Right. Exactly. Exactly. That's it. Yes. Well put.
Yeah.
In case of custody.
Paul Capaldi, see comment above.
The RAV4 is not stored where it's supposed to be, which in itself demonstrates ledgers and chain of custody aren't. Do we know that, Henry? The one above, Paul.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. The one I've just. Oh, sorry. The next one up from Henbury.
No, Henbury's one up there. Yeah, that's the one he's referring to.
Yeah, but he says see comment above.
Yes, up further underneath Scott Ferris bodybuilding. See up there?
It just whizzes right past. I don't understand that.
It should. Well, it's showing on the same page for me. I see the one you have highlighted, and then his is second one from the top. Henbury.
Yeah. And then also it just shoots. Hold on a sec. Let's try this.
You shouldn't need to move it at all.
Is that it?
Yes, that was it.
Yeah, but I've only got it as big blocks, and I click on one or two, and then all of a sudden the thing starts scrolling around like a blinking slot machine or something,
Mm-hmm. Oh, he retyped it even there, but okay, so
yeah.
Makes sense. Her bro is Pinocchio. No, Weird is Pinocchio. Have you guys seen my meme where he's like this? And it says, if I were Pinocchio, my nose would be this long.
Right. Now, how do I get... there we go. Okay, I'm going to let you go because it's now midnight here in the UK.
All right. Well, I'm glad that between Linda and I and you and I and everything, we've given everybody a lot of interesting content today and a lot of stuff to think about. So that's good.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is that for some people, this might be considered a period of lull in terms of what's actually going on in the case.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly with regards to Steve, we're waiting for February the 11th, which is what
something like that is when the state's responses due roughly. Yeah,
that'll be interesting. It will be interesting because I just don't know how they're going to extricate themselves from having to provide explanations to everything that Kathleen Zellner has stated.
Well,
and what we've seen so far. So
I agree. I mean, but we got to hope that the Court of Appeals is going to call them on their BS. I mean, the Court of Appeals has to hopefully, I mean, that in order for this to open up, the Court of Appeals has to open it up for Zellner. They have to, like, literally club the damn district court over the head and or the circuit court or whatever, the lower court over the head and say, hold a hearing. That's it. No ifs, ands, or buts. Hearing. That's it. Because she's got to be able to get in there and start arguing this stuff, getting people on the stand saying things that she can then use against them. So that's what's going to open it up for her. And we got to get to that stage. And that's the tough part. That's going to be the tough part, is getting into that courtroom.
I mean, the thing is that the other thing, of course, will be interesting to see about this Andy Colburn case and see what happens next, because all that's happened so far is the judge has decided that there's no statute of limitations, or they cleared that hurdle, or something like that. Is that right? Is that my correct interpretation of it?
The statute of limitations. I'm sorry, regarding what?
The Netflix Andy Colburn case.
Oh, that. Well, I don't know what's going to happen there, but they do get to refile.
They get to refile, but does that mean then that they can put Andy Colburn on a stand?
Well, that's the interesting thing there, is that if that does go forward, there could potentially be a whole bunch of discovery from depositions that go on. If that starts to go to trial and depositions, and people start getting called into depositions, there could be a bunch of information that comes from that. And Zellner would be able to get it. She'd be able to ask for it. FOIA.
Right.
So it could get interesting.
I mean, I just took this whole thing. It's a little bit like, as I say, I've got these guilters that get on at me and they try and provoke some sort of lash out by me, as if I'm gonna flip my lid or something or whatever, and I'm gonna give them a rant of some sort, with a lot of expletives, even though that's what they send me sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
and it ain't gonna happen.
Right.
But it's almost like that sort of that one test, or I'm going to send this to the lawyers, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to have you for this, I'm going to, and if you dare write anything about me, blah 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 blah, and to me that's what I took that as being, that whole pursuing via Andy Colburn and Netflix. It's that kind of retaliation. It's a little bit like the Colonel Adams that says, oh no, we're not going to shut down this Lucas thing. We're going to keep going, but we are going to look at you.
Right.
You know, and it seems as if the only way to defend is to then attack.
Yeah, it's true. Sometimes they say the best defense is a good offense.
Well, that brings us very nicely to our final question: who is going to win the Super Bowl?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. None of the teams are my favorites, so I'm just basically picking from whatever. But
I mean, do the Vikings? Do they go to the Packers next?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure. No, I think it depends. Both games have to finish today to see how that works out. It ends up whichever two teams win today, whichever one has the best record will go against. Anyways, it has to do with the seeding, so they have to wait till both games are finished.
All right, okay.
I don't think it works like a regular bracket. It works where they shift around according to seed. Anyway,
yeah. So San Francisco qualified as number 1 seeds with Green Bay Packers second.
Right.
And what about the other conference? Is it conference they call it?
Well, see, the other games you got going today are, you had yesterday. Let's see. The Titans yesterday they beat the Patriots. Took the Patriots out. Yeah. And the Titans are going to be going up against Baltimore next.
Mm-hmm.
So, and Baltimore looks pretty tough. So,
Baltimore apparently have been on a streak that's been going on for quite a while now.
Yeah, I used to be a Baltimore fan too a bit because I like the way they played defense back around the 2000 to 2010. Man, they were just playing phenomenal defense there in Baltimore. Part of it was started under Ray Lewis, who is certainly one of the best linebackers to ever play the game. But yeah, so
I was shocked to find out because I couldn't understand why we hadn't heard anything about Clay Matthews. He was playing for one of the LA teams this year.
Right.
I couldn't understand why they got rid of him because he's like a hero, isn't he?
I'm not. Who's Clay Matthews? I'm not. I'm trying.
Well, is he not also a linebacker?
Oh, he might be. I haven't been following football this year, so I'm.
Right. Have you been too busy watching the?
I was watching some of the playoffs yesterday in between recording, but
the Aussie rules football.
Yeah. Well, see, when I was in Australia, I had a little more free time.
Yep.
So.
Okay. It is now gone 12:30, so I am going to say cheerio.
We found something Rule doesn't know anything about American football. There we go.
Rule's knowledge of American football is as Erekose is on geography.
Yeah, what he said.
Okay, we'll catch you later.
Yep, we'll see you, buddy.
Say cheerio.
Yep. That's bye from me.
And it's goodbye from him. And if you haven't done so, go for it.
And if you haven't done so already, please hit subscribe for Mr. Capaldi.
There you go. Cheers, dude.
Alrighty, see you, buddy.
Yeah, see everybody. Bye for now.